I have been asking myself what I should be doing about the Trump regime since he was reelected in 2024. The conflict has been between my experience in political organizing and activism and my deep desire to be working in the arts. At the time, I was in post-production for Oops All Witches, and what I decided at that time was that the most important thing that I could do was finish the sound designing and publish the podcast, because it's about how when you live in an oppressive, patriarchal society, the thing to do is to empower and focus on young women of color. And it felt important that I get that message and that story out. But a little more than a week after I published the final 3 episodes and the US government executes Renee Good in the streets for failing to comply, for protecting her neighbors, for saying no to them. The reason this has been a conflict for me and the reason why I am talking directly about it right now is because I have been an active political organizer for years, but I haven't been active as a political organizer since 2020, when I ran for California State Assembly in District 15 against the incumbent Democrat from her left. I was running for a number of reasons. It was a protest candidacy for sure. I knew I was never going to win. I also have a personal grudge against Buffy Wicks for getting Mayor 16 Shots in a Cover-Up elected in Chicago in 2010, which is my hometown. And then she followed me here to the Bay Area in 2016, only to snatch that seat out from underneath a local Black woman progressive with the help of the National Democratic Party and California State Republicans. But really what I was doing was trying to make a documentary about what it's like to run for office when you're a normal person with a normal full-time job. The reason I even felt able to do this, to navigate the electoral system as a candidate, is because in 2016, I was a co-founder of Bay Area for Bernie. When I spoke to Bernie Sanders' campaign staff, they told me that Bay Area for Bernie was the best organized grassroots group in the country. In order to keep Bay Area for Bernie running, I actually had to separate myself from it with a number of other people so we could form a non-connected political action committee, because we spent more than $1,000 organizing for him. And so in order to continue funding that, we had to form a PAC. Navigating the details of being a political action committee showed me how this system is designed to keep normal people from participating in it in any meaningful way. I figured if I'd run a PAC, I could run for office, but if I was going to run for office, if I was going to bear the burden of that, I was going to make a documentary about it. I kind of imagined it being like Super Size Me, but rather than like spending a month eating nothing but McDonald's for every meal and letting my body turn into a chicken nugget, instead, I would just torture myself with the political process. I wanted to show people things like the way that every rule and regulation in our legal system isn't written in plain English, but in a version of English that is hard to parse. So you have to have an above average education and intelligence in order to understand what the rules are, what it is you need to do. And they're not written in any other language. So the rules and the regulations are inaccessible to most Americans. Or I wanted to show how the rules and regulations governing running for a seat are overseen by a variety of agencies and departments at the local, state, and federal level, and figuring out who you need to talk to just to understand what it is you have to do. You have to call multiple different agencies. The people who answer the phones there don't necessarily know the answer to your question, and they'll probably refer you out to some other agency or department. Or you might get a completely different answer if you just call the next day and speak to someone else. Nobody knows what's going on. Or I wanted to show people just how expensive it is. Getting my name on the ballot wiped out 1/10 of my savings. If I had wanted to get a blurb about myself published in the voter guide in both counties I was running in, it would have wiped out my savings entirely. The system, regardless of your party, regardless of your values, regardless of your politics, the system is designed to keep ordinary people from having any meaningful say in how we are governed. It is designed to keep us out. The only options that we have is to either vote for someone to represent you who gets to make those laws, vote yes or no on a ballot initiative, or run for office yourself. We have no other power to determine how we are governed. If one were to run for office successfully, you would have to have the money to be able to get your name out to all the people that you need to vote for you, whether that's having that money yourself or having the network and the contacts to wrangle those resources. You have to have multiple other people who are willing to devote their time, full time, to getting you elected. That's not something most Americans have. Not the money, not the contacts, not the free time. So, in reality, every person who represents us, no matter how much you like them, is not like you. They are not particularly representative. It also costs a lot of money to get something as a ballot initiative for you to vote on. You have to have resources to do that too. You have to have people you can pay to go out and get signatures. You have to have operations. Or you can run for office yourself, needing all of those aforementioned resources. So the system, by design, prevents us from having any power, because the power is in making the laws, not in voting, but in making the laws. And we don't get to make the laws. Nothing has undermined my faith in the American political project more than participating in it. But that was in 2020. I made it through the jungle primary into the general, and then the entire world shut down. I couldn't go to campaign events. I couldn't go door to door. And frankly, running for office, let alone running for office while making a documentary, is so difficult and time-consuming that when I had to choose between working and running a campaign or working and surviving a global pandemic, I chose to survive the global pandemic and save my money and take care of myself. Because I was torturing myself. Then in 2021, I moved. I got divorced. In 2022, my dog died. I had to learn to survive on my own as a working freelance artist in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. I was in survival mode for a long time. When I finally came out of survival mode and was ready to work on something of my own again, I did not want to get back into politics. I also knew during Biden's presidency that all that was a brief respite, and that we were in for it again in 2024. And I knew I would have to find a way to get ready for now. But like I said, I was editing Oops All Witches, and to me, while I do have this experience in political organizing, I've been organizing with the movement for Black Lives since 2014. It's joyless. There's nothing in it that feels good. No sense of civic pride, just more mindless hustle. And it is my deeply held belief that you do not enact change through politics. You do it through the culture. You have to change people's minds first. And the people who are most effective at doing that are artists. That's why fascists and authoritarians and totalitarians target artists. Because what we do is imagine different worlds and then bring them out of our heads and into reality in some form or another for other people to experience, to imagine, to think about, to feel. Things that are not real in the world, we make them real. Showing people that any of us can do that is a threat to authoritarians, as is provoking people to think from perspectives outside their own, to expand the boundaries of their imaginations. Authoritarians need the population they govern to be cowering and fearful and to think that there is no other option except the one that they present to you. And that's why they kill to enforce it. They teach you to be afraid of saying no to them, of imagining something different than what they have to offer, no matter how depraved and brutal and barbaric it is. So in the spirit of being a political activist, but someone who wants you to expand the bounds of your imagination, I want to propose a thought experiment. I'm going to pitch you two different policy proposals that, when paired together, I believe would do the majority of the work of repair that we need in this country, utilizing, for the most part, the system that is already in place and that we could do in about maybe 50 years, I think. We could bloodlessly, completely restructure our society and our culture with these two policy proposals. The first, white men over the age of 45 are banned from holding political office or jobs in law enforcement. Old white men do not get to make or enforce the rules for the next 50 years. They need to take a time out. I'm not saying they can't vote. They can vote. They just can't have this job. I'm not saying all white men. I'm saying old white men. I'm not saying all old men. I'm saying old white men. Now, would we have to bend the rules a little bit to get this to work? Yeah. Who cares? I'm not pitching this to you to be like, all right, guys, how do we do this? That's not the question. Feasibility isn't what I'm asking for here. What I'm asking for you to do is to imagine Congress take all the white men over the age of 45 out of it and then fill it with everyone else who would replace them. And imagine that's who's making the rules. That's who's enforcing the rules. What would this country look like? The next policy proposal that has to be done in tandem with the first one is that we orient the entire political project. The unifying goal of the United States is to ensure the health, safety, welfare, and happiness of Black girls. To make sure that Black girls are thriving, we would have to make sure that the communities that support them are thriving. And those communities support other communities, so those other communities would thrive too. The thing about these two policy proposals is I have identified the source of the problem within our power structures, the people making and enforcing the rules, and then I have proposed a solution. Reorient around young Black girls, because old white men wield power at the expense of everybody else. And if we center the welfare of young Black girls, that would be to the benefit of everyone else. I'm not saying we're going to do it. That's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. What I'm asking you to do is imagine what this country would look like in 50 years if we started ignoring every old white man who wields the authority of the law and said, nope, sorry, you don't get to say that to us anymore. You don't decide for us. We decide for ourselves, and you're excluded for now. I am leaving this in the realm of realism. It's not outside the scope of reality to exclude people from political participation in the United States. We do that shit all the time. It is not outside the realm of reality to focus the political project on making sure one small demographic is doing well. We do that all the time too. But whiteness, maleness, richness, age, all of those identities are identities of exclusion. So we exclude the excluders and we focus on the includers. In the wake of Renee Good's execution, I've seen a lot of people on social getting closer and closer to talking about what's going to come next. We have to think about what comes after what comes next. I have just identified the problem and pitched a bloodless solution that causes harm to no one, that is to the benefit of everyone. What's your idea?